Hi, and welcome to the Love Learns podcast. My name is Dionne Zara, just your average girl wishing to learn more about love and relationships. As a young girl, I always dreamt about my wedding day, and to be fair, I still do sometimes. With many couples around me, I quickly came to realise love isn't as straightforward as the movies make out. So I thought I would have conversations with couples who made it past happily ever after to learn more about love. And when I say love, I don't mean like the movies and fairy tales, but I mean LOVE, learning to be open, vulnerable, and empathetic. So if you're ready to learn, unlearn, and discover love through couples, you're in the right place. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Love Learns. This week, we're going to be talking a bit about the evolution of relationships. I'm here again with Yar. Say hi, Yar.
Hi.
And we're going to be just exploring a little bit about relationships from what I remember, like watching movies and how I've seen relationships play out. A lot of the time I see like the romantic stage where we're always kind of doing everything that we need to, like covering all the love language bases is within those like that early period of time. So you're affirming each other, you're like very tactile with each other, and you're giving gifts and that kind of style of relationship. And then you also have like later down the line, it kind of starts slowing down and you get less gifts and it's more and less affirming, but there's still a lot of love within the relationships. And in movies, we see this a lot. We see the beginning of it like being completely high and exciting, and then something happens and then it kind of falls apart. Yeah, have you ever noticed this within like movies, relationships, even your own relationships?
I will talk about myself, and the answer to the question is yes, and it's not just in romantic relationships. I would say in all relationships, because I think in the beginning there's that it's that dopamine effect, isn't it? Where you're just so like happy to meet someone that you like, even if it's not in a romantic way. It's just like you connect and you've got all of these things in common, or you just really, really like each other. You're not even sure why you connect. And so in the beginning, it's lots of sharing and giving each other stuff. It doesn't even necessarily have to be physical gifts, but just giving each other stuff and spending lots of time together. And then as time goes on, I think it just goes back to that idea of, I'm not sure how it goes, but it's that storming, norming, forming, that kind of idea. So in the beginning, you are going to have, because you're just enjoying each other, you're going to have the you're going to have that connection, you're going to really enjoy that connection, but then you hit a rough patch, and the rough patch is just normally when you just realize, as much as you may like the person, as much as you're like the person, you're not the same. So you're going to have differences, and so you work through that, and then you eventually, I think, you get to a stage where it's kind of like a middle ground, a happy medium, where you're just enjoying that person for who that person is, and not trying to be like, oh, we do all of these things, like, oh, we don't do these things, or like, we're not trying to be the same, and you're just kind of accepting and embracing each other for who you are. And I think those are examples of the good relationships that I've been in, irrespective of what kind of relationships they are.
And when you say storming, forming, and is it storming, norming, forming?
I'm not sure, but
okay.
I know that it's like a square, and there's 4 different parts of it. And in the beginning, I can't remember how it goes, but there's literally a square of how it goes. And eventually, basically in the beginning, you really enjoy each other's company. Then you go through a period where, like I said, you're not getting, not even necessarily getting along. You just start to notice each other's differences. Okay. And then you eventually kind of reach a point of where you're just kind of like, this is who we are, and this is what our relationship is within that.
Okay. Because from a scientifical point of view, I've seen that the beginning is, as you said, the dopamine rush, where that could last from, like the research says, it can last from 6 months to 2 years. And then we also have that's at that beginning of the stage, you're using a lot of, you're going off of a lot of emotion rather than logic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, oh, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this. So you're going off of that. And then after that period of time, either after 6 months or after the 2 years, you have um, like your logical part of your brain starts to form, and you into like seeing the relationship logically rather than emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then from then on, that's when the differences start to come in. And that at that period, a lot of people do end relationships or friendships because there is a bit of a tension between it. More so relationships than friendships. Friendships, you tend to accept
Mm-hmm.
differences much easier than you
Mm-hmm.
do in romantic relationships. And we tend to see that point where things either fail or continue to develop. And I
Mm-hmm.
think depending on your maturity at that point, also can depend, and how bad the differences are,
Yeah.
can show up in a different way. Have you ever been in a situation where you've seen differences between you and a friend, or in a relationship where you've had to go separate ways because the differences were too much?
Yeah, all the time. I've had many relationships and friendships like that. Like it's just, and I've just always put it down to, like you said, once you recognize that you, once you get over the dopamine effect, I think it comes back to, is this really working for me? Is this
Mm.
really serving me? And if it is, you continue, and if it isn't, then you leave. And if anything, I would have said that I've stayed in relationships longer than I needed to be in a lot of cases, because you're hoping to get back to that space. And I think where I've been too agreeable in the past, it's cost me a lot of time, I would say. I wouldn't call it time wasting, because I think it was a lesson I had to learn, but it's definitely things that I look back on now and I would do differently, and I would show up more of as myself,
Mm.
and just kind of like, this is who I am, um, take it or leave it. And what I've realized is that most people will actually take it, but we haven't really we've spoken a lot about me and my experiences and the
Mm-hmm.
scientific part, but we haven't spoken about you. What's been your experience?
My experience has been like, now that I'm growing in myself,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that, just like you, I stayed in a lot of relationships much longer than I needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some relationships I got into knowing I shouldn't have got into it, but because I wanted to please other people,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got to a stage where I would get into relationships because it was like the easier thing to do in that
Mm.
moment in time, because I didn't want to cause any conflict or
Can I
like,
ask, was this relationships both kind of romantic as well as
yes,
platonic? Yeah.
both romantic and platonic
Mm.
relationships where I've done that, where I
Mm-hmm.
know, this is not going to be a good match, but
Yeah.
because I know that it's easier for me to, and I'm going to avoid conflict and the awkwardness by just agreeing with you,
Mm.
would make it a lot easier for me than for me to say, actually, this isn't working. This
Mm.
won't work. We should just stay in this capacity as either acquaintances or as friends, and
Mm.
just kind of keep it casual,
Mm-hmm.
rather than committing to anything like long term.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now that I've kind of grown and like understood a bit about myself, and understanding that actually it's okay to disagree with people, and it's okay for you to be in a space where if you don't want something, it's okay.
Mm.
Um, and it's okay for there to be awkwardness. You can just sit with it. And since I've been at that point, I've been a lot more selective with friends and relationships that I
Mm-hmm.
get into. And if someone doesn't have, like, now that I'm dating now, when I see things on the profile like that I just know would not sit well with me,
Yeah.
it's just that it's different, and
Mm.
it's not what I want. So it's okay for me to pass on this.
Mm.
But also doing it in a way that even if I'm in conversation with the person, letting them understand, I just don't think it's a good match. We could be friends, but even that, sometimes it might not even be good to be
Yeah.
friends. But just we're different. We're too different for it to be
Yeah,
compatible. And
yeah,
me understanding that a healthy relationship needs a bit of compatibility, not just in romantic relationship, but also in friendships. There needs to be something that we both have value for, and both see value in,
yeah, yeah,
so that we can connect on those things. And if those things changed, the relationship is also going to change. So we're either going to come apart or it's going to bring us closer. But the way we deal with those changes and those differences is what's going to determine how the relationship is going to look.
yeah.
But I think a lot of it is basically communicating within those periods of times. Like, you're bound to have differences. You're bound to get to a place where you're starting to get irritated with something, or not understand something as well. So you're trying to understand that person, but without that communication, you can't get to a place of understanding. So yeah, I think for me, in my past relationships, it was very much me doing things for the sake of the other person,
Yeah.
which hindered the evolution of the relationship, because I was molding and adapting to their needs rather than molding and adapting to what I needed as well.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, of course, I'm going to take into account what you need, but I also need to take into account what I need. I can't fully accept that everything you need is what I need. There's going to be a time where it's going to be, I'm gonna start getting a little bit annoyed or a little bit jealous because I haven't got what I wanted in the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, most relationships start off being transactional in the beginning, and then over time, you kind of learn to serve each other and learn to work with each other with what each other's bringing, rather than it being so like.
And do you, because I don't believe that all relationships start off as transactional. I know a lot of people do. So why do you say that?
I think when you, from what I've noticed, when you are in a place where I was a lot of people pleasing, it was very much transactional, because I thought it would be easier if I gave something, someone will give me something.
Yeah, oh, okay.
And that's how I thought the relationship should go.
Okay, I see what you mean.
In this point of view now, I don't give to receive. I just give because I want to be giving. But that's because I've become so comfortable in who I am, and I know what I can give. I don't give out of my. I only give out of my excess, not out of my lack.
Yeah.
If that's what you mean. Like, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having that transaction isn't
you serve your first.
Yeah, I serve myself first, so that I'm not relying on them serving me to fill me. It's more of me filling myself, and then whatever I have, I can give, not expecting anything back.
Yeah. And then, so what happens then when they do give, when they don't give anything back, and you feel, and you are giving to them, but you're not getting anything back? What happens then?
That is dependent on the relationship, because there's some relationships I know I'm going to give more into than I'm going to receive.
Yeah.
And that's my expectation of the relationship. But if I feel like the expectations I have of the relationship isn't being met on the other person's side, it's just having that conversation and saying, well, I feel like I'm giving to this relationship. What is your expectations of this relationship of me?
Yeah.
And then understanding what they see their expectations is of me, and comparing it to my own expectations, and then assessing the situation then, and saying, actually, I think your expectations of me is way more than I expect of you, or I'm expecting way too much of you. I would expect this, and have that conversation to see if we can find a middle ground.
Yeah.
Or if it's just, okay, maybe you're just expecting too much from me, and I'm expecting too much of you. So maybe we can just serve each other how we think we can serve each other, but don't expect too much from each other.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. What about you? Like, how you say that you don't think that relationships start off transactionally.
No, I've never thought about it like that.
Okay.
But when you explained it, I can see why now. Especially, I think it's when you're looking for validation outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where I would have said, but I never looked at it that way before. But now that I'm thinking about it, it may have, yeah, it may have, there may have, well, actually, a lot of my relationships would have been like that. Because I was going in it to really serve, so that's what I'm looking at it from. But then I would get upset when nothing, my expectations of what I was expecting of the other people, what the other person wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm a lot more, I'm a lot more clearer about what it is that I want, and it's like you said, serving yourself first. And so by serving myself first, I'm able then to say this and this and this and this are the things that I need, and if you can't meet that, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I got to be out.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's what I liked that you said earlier was the importance of having a conversation,
Yeah.
because when you have a conversation, then it makes people aware of where they stand, because sometimes people aren't even aware. So when you have that conversation, people are then aware, and then they can make the necessary adjustments. And what I will say, and I definitely have seen this a lot in friendships, is you have to be okay with walking away from people who lie to you. And by that I mean you will have that conversation with longtime friends, and they will say all the right things. And like I said, this is more friendships than relationships. They will make all the right noises, say all the right things, but then continue their bad behavior, because that's where the relationship has got to. Especially if you've been a people pleaser in your past, like me, and now that tide is changing. That person, whilst they don't want to let go of the relationship, they're not willing to change. So it's
Yeah.
almost like they're not willing to let go of the relationship, but they're not willing to. If we go back to what we started the conversation with, they're not willing to allow the relationship to evolve.
Yeah.
Or allow you to evolve within that relationship. So the evolution of the relationship is therefore stunted, and because it's stunted, you have to be aware of that. I had to be aware of that and be like, okay, I'm going to love you from afar, but you don't necessarily need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's how I've seen like relationships evolve for me as well. Like I've started to see that, oh, because I'm aware of my evolution of myself, I can also I'm also changing this relationship.
Yes.
Because I'm changing this relationship, I have to also be brave and courageous enough to have the conversation that because I'm changing, this relationship is changing.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
if you're not having those conversations, then there's a lot more friction, a lot more tension, because you know you're growing, but you're not having those conversations, and that's not allowing the other person to respect or even appreciate your growth within that relationship.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you can put it on the other person and blame the other person for not giving to the relationship, but you haven't also expressed what you need in those relationships for it to grow. So having conversations and understanding the fact that you're changing means that your relationships are also going to change.
Yeah.
Means that there's evolution happening within the relationship, even if the relationship is staying the same. The fact that you're growing within that relationship means there's an evolution.
Yeah. And that's very, very true. But what I also think is it's really important to know that you will have those conversations with those friends, and they will still keep doing the same nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important to then assess from that point, because a lot of, I don't necessarily think that's always necessary to end friendships in particular. It's not necessarily important to end them, because the other person oftentimes doesn't understand, especially if there is a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
So they are aware of what's going on, but they're not aware of the role they play in that. So by you saying, I'm going to end the friendship, I'm walking away with the friendship from the friendship, they don't understand that, especially if there's somebody who isn't willing to, who hasn't done their work to that level. So it's really important then to recognize, and I have a friend in particular, when I say this, who I recognize that the most important thing I could do for this particular friend is just allow them to be.
Yeah.
Just allow them to be in that space, and just kind of, rather than trying to make them better and having umpteen conversations. I think it was even earlier this year where I just accepted this is how they are.
Yeah.
And even I have tried to, in my own way, to walk away from the relationship, and they don't want to let me go. But at the same time, I'm not willing, no longer willing to accept your crumbs. Yeah. So I need a piece of the cake now. And because you're not willing to give me a piece of the cake, you still want to give me crumbs, but at the same time you don't want me to leave. I'm not willing to starve for you anymore. So therefore I'm just gonna bake my own cake and bake it over here, and just allow you to keep thinking it's okay to give me crumbs, because it isn't, but it's okay for you. But that is, you understand. So it's almost like the relationship has evolved. It's not almost like it is. The relationship has evolved, but the other person hasn't got the memo, the full memo. They understand something's not the same. Yeah. They haven't got the full memo, but they're okay with it because they don't want to maybe address it. And you have to, then me also recognizing that, oh, okay, this is what's going on. So now I must love that person from afar, because I'm not willing to give so much to get back so little.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so key in relationships. As you said, like, just knowing that you can let someone be, and it's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing, or it's just the relationship is different now, and that's okay. Yeah. And it's fine for it to be different. There's no right or wrong, better or worse. It's just, it is what it is. And on that note, guys, we're going to end this episode. And if you have any thing to share with us, just put it in the comments. We can share and explore more ideas around the evolution of relationships and how it's affecting you. If you have stories about how a relationship has affected you, maybe put it in the comments, and then I will message you back. So thanks so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.